Howdy everybody, this will be a quick little demo of some of the new features of ProbeIt for UCNC. First thing we'll do is pop it open. So on your front page here you've still got all the same basic 2D probing routines. It's a little bit more clear about inside and outside routines now. Dedicated button to kind of toggle between them and update the buttons with appropriate pictures. The left side menu for inputs now has a hideaway feature, so if you're working on a smaller screen and you've got everything shrunk down, you can kind of toggle between inputting the speeds and feeds and distances, and then have the buttons available for a little bit more space. The 3D surface or bed of nails type of probing is still there. No new advancements on this tab. The new tab to show off is now it's got a built-in G-code editor and the ability to do auto leveling or warping the G-code. So first thing we'll do is let's open a small file here, and you can view the code. You've got an editor over here. You can type and edit the G-code and see on the fly the changes. You can highlight code and see where you're at on the file. You can choose the selection color, make it pop out a little bit better. You've got some ability to select and edit some different schemes and colorings, and then you can go ahead and within that edit the colors of all the various schemes and create new ones if you'd like. Let's just go back to the starting one here. So on this file here, let's look at some of the new features of auto leveling. If I get rid of the boundary box, we've got a file here loaded up. If I go and open this warp and level G-code button, you can create a grid of points that you would probe. So if we're looking down on top of it, you've got the ability to set the spacing and do a little bit to shift it around. So it's kind of set up to automatically give you a best fit and then let you tweak it from there. If we wanted to, we could go ahead and probe all these points. We'd have that. We could then save it and warp the G-code against it. I've got an existing height map just for a demo purpose. We'll just open that file real quick. So you can see these points are all green. It shows they've been previously probed and they're not just random points. So if you look at it on a side view here, we've got some elevation change in the Z direction. So we can go ahead and have a few features of labeling the new segmented chunks when it breaks up the file and warps it, showing the comments. And let's tell it to level the G0 moves. So the G0 moves are shown in red. So right now they're level with everything else. If we go ahead and parse it, you can see the G-code as well as all the G0 moves and everything are warped against that surface. So let's say we didn't like what we just did. We can undo that, go back to our original file. Let's say we don't want to level the G0 moves, but everything else we do. And go ahead and parse it. Now only the G1, G2, G3 type moves are warped against the height map. Something else you can do, let's undo this once. Let's say we have a specific spot. This yellow cone inverted here represents our tool position. You can see I can shift that around. And let's say I know I want to probe and set my 0 at some point on the file. I could locate my position. And let's say I want at the current location, so I've just grabbed the minus 0.267 and the minus 0.235, and we're going to say set the height map to 0 at this point, and it tells us we're going to shift the height map by 60 thou, so basically this point will slide up, and then we can parse that again. And now we've warped our file and modified the Z location to a point where we can pick where we want to do a zeroing as we set up. So that's some of the new features with regards to the auto leveling. Some of the other tools you've got, again, you can save your height map. So assuming you have some 3D object that you want to maybe engrave something onto again and again, you wouldn't have to probe this every time. You know, assuming the surface is not changing, you could just probe it once and save the height map and reopen it like I did here. Something else you can do with the G-code, you've got some tools here to do some basic editing. You can scale it between inch and metric or a user set scaling. So let's say we want to do it to a quarter scale. And we can decide maybe we don't want to scale the Z, we want to leave that alone. So there we've shrunk the file down, but we left the Z scaling alone, so it really warped the heck out of it. So let's undo that. You can mirror the G code, you can flip it in the X or Y. Let's flip it on its X and hold its location. So there you've flipped everything over. Again, this isn't the type of file that maybe that would be useful for, but it's just showing what it's capable of doing. You've got the ability to shift the G code around, which maybe isn't of a whole lot of use if you can just set up work offsets, but you can also rotate your G code. Again, depending on what you're doing and how your setups are, that may or may not be of use. If you can do a G68 rotation, but there's some very basic tools here. And so we've got our warp G code here. We can just send it straight off to UCCNC, and it's ready to run. And again, you've got it fully loaded up in view, and you can see it's ready to run. So that in a nutshell is some of the new tools added into ProbeIt as of version 2.2. So hope you get some use of the new features and they're useful to you. And if you have any suggestions or requests for modifications of the software, go ahead and send me an email. I appreciate it. Thank you. And one last item I wanted to mention, just so it's clear and there's no confusion, ProbeIt as of version 2.200 does have two different OpenGL graphics windows now. The one that's embedded in the G-code tools tab here is strictly speaking for the G-code editor and doing the auto leveling. When you're doing probing on the On the normal 2D probing tab, either your typical edge side probing bores, or if you're doing perimeter probing and collecting your data, you'll still use the separate show viewer, hide viewer button up at the top of the program there, and have this separate floating window with its own viewer. This is the one that collects the and shows your DXF data as you collect it. So again, just want to make sure that it's understood and there's no confusion that there are now two separate viewing windows, but they have two different purposes depending on which one you're looking at. So